Either where you are. Well, he's portrayed some of Britain's most famous faces, including Tony Blair, of course, Prince Andrew, and Sir David Frost. Now, award-winning actor Michael Sheen...
The doctor-patient relationship is sacred.
...makes his return to the stage this week in the play Nye. It is a gripping tale of the man who founded the NHS. And I found out something very interesting from you, Ed, this morning about Nye Bevan, the founder of the NHS, which you and Michael might discuss.
Well, he was a stammerer.
That's right.
And one of the great stammerers of the 20th century. People aren't sure whether Winston Churchill had a stammer, but they know that Nye Bevan did. And he was a former miner, bullied at school. But he had that way of speaking in the House of Commons. It was quite kind of flowery and sort of... I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but it was his way of coping with that halting stammer.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of central to our story, really, because here's a man who becomes known for being one of the great orators of his time. And yet, he grew up, young boy in Tredegar, worked down the mines, very young, and had this stammer. And one of the best scenes in the play, I think, one of the most powerful scenes in the play, is where he goes to Tredegar Working Men's Library and learns to expand his vocabulary so that when a word comes up that he knows he's going to stammer on, he chooses another word, which is what added to that kind of extraordinary oratorical manner that he had later when he was in the Houses of Parliament.
And he turned it, didn't he, to his advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a better speaker in the end in the House of Commons because he had to sometimes pause because he had a block coming and he would wait and then go on
It gives
again.
a kind of explosive quality to his... And because he was so passionate as well, you know, it sort of added to that, the power and his ability to sort of run rings around people in the Houses of Parliament. His stand-up rows with Winston Churchill are kind of central to the piece.
And I bet when he was 13 and 14, if he'd been told when he was struggling with his stammer that you would go on to not only found the National Health Service, but be a great orator in Parliament, I bet he wouldn't have believed it was possible.
Well, that's the extraordinary thing about the journey that he goes on. As a young lad coming from Tredegar, down the mines, and then ends up becoming the Minister for Health and Housing in the post-war government, and changes all our lives, you know, it gets the NHS through, fights to get it through. And, you know, just in the last couple of years, I've had a child be born into the world through the NHS, and my father just weeks ago left the world, you know, helped by the NHS as well. So it's been integral to my life in the last couple of years, and I know it pushes buttons for everybody when they come and see the play.
Can I ask you, because when you think about your amazing portrayals of Tony Blair or Brian Clough, even David Frost, well, I think particularly with Clough and Blair, there's something about you where you managed to physically portray. I mean, there's a look about you and them which kind of adds to the brilliance of the performance. When it came to Bevan, was that? I mean, how did you go about that? Because he's like a really big, burly, kind of bullish figure.
Well, I've put on a bit of weight, as you can see, but
Deliberately for the role.
Yeah. Because
I would be so nervous about doing that because I'd be so afraid that I wouldn't then be able to lose it
Well,
again.
this is where I'm at now, Susanna, yes.
Is it?
This is what I'm discovering myself, yeah. But because we did the play last year, and it was so popular and so successful, we've brought it back this year again. But, yeah, so I put on a bit of weight for it, and we, you know, spent time down in Tredegar, went to visit all the places where he grew up, and you just sort of immerse yourself in the life of these people, and sometimes, hopefully, if it works right, it kind of just symbiotically starts to affect the way I look, it seems.
So I'm right that you do embody the character.
I try to, yeah. I mean, the physicality of it. In this play, in the play that I'm doing at the moment of Nye, it's whilst he's in hospital at the end of his life, so we're sort of in his head for most of the time, so it's a sort of fantasia. So I'm in my pyjamas all the way through it, because I'm in hospital. But we go through his life, we see him as a child, we see him growing up, going into politics and eventually becoming, you know, getting the NHS through. But, so it's a very physical performance, but I'm barefoot all the way through it. At one point, I even do a song and dance. Barefoot in my pyjamas, you know, so it's a real fantasia of a piece.
And I spoke to Colin Firth about playing George VI and his stammer. Is the stammer something that you had to kind of incorporate into the embodiment?
Absolutely. To the point where I have to work out exactly which words I'm going to stammer on, which ones I then have to overcome later, you know. That Tim Price, who wrote the play, is a stammerer himself. So I was able to pick up a lot from just, you know, watching and listening to him. But it's so integral to the piece and who he is, I think.
It's very interesting, because presumably you don't naturally have a stammer.
No.
Ed, of course, is very open about... You're very open about your stammer in a way that is...
I wasn't when I was in the cabinet.
That's right. But you are now in a way that really, every time you talk about it, I can feel that viewers at home, particularly children or parents of children with a stammer, are grateful that you are so open about it. You weren't, though, for a time, of course, and particularly in high-level politics, where you're on a stage at Westminster in the House of Commons, and you are actually, you know, the butt of people's insults, criticisms and jokes because of it.
That's right, but I think it's a different world now, and I wouldn't think that Bevan would have been able to speak about his stammer in the House of Commons either. It wouldn't have been something he would have talked about.
No, absolutely. And at one point, Winston Churchill describes him as being the stuttering orator. And it's that contradiction in him, you know. On the one hand, he grew up with this, you know, with the stammer, but he turned it to his advantage and it became a strength. And I think that's that's obviously something you've done as well, Ed. And I think if you can get rid of the stigma around a lot of these things, which is what can hold you back, it can turn into a strength rather than a weakness, I think, you know, and people like yourself and Bevan and Joe Biden have shown that as well.
Part of who you are. But in the end, I mean, Bevan's not remembered for his stammer, he's remembered for founding the health service and making it happen. It's an amazing achievement.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. Like I said, you know, to go on the journey that he went, I think especially at a time where people, I think, mistrust a lot of politicians, mistrust the reasons for why people get into politics, rightly or wrongly, to see the story of a man who grew up in the conditions that he grew up in the community he grew up in, felt like there was something wrong, there was an injustice and unfairness, and thought, I'm going to change this.
He was also a champion of culture. And theatre.
Well, and his wife, of course, Jenny Lee, founded the Open University, first Minister for the Arts.
Wow. And you went on, as a result of this, to found the Welsh National Theatre.
That's right.
Was there not a Welsh National Theatre before?
Well, there was a National Theatre of Wales.
OK, right.
Which had all its funding cut.
OK.
And so we were, essentially, when we went into rehearsals for Nye the first time, it had just happened, it had just been cut. And so we were looking at, you know, possibly our country not having its own national theatre. So as a result, really, of doing this play Nye and seeing how successful it was, how the audience really responded to it, particularly in Wales, because we'll be performing here until August 16th at the National Theatre, then we go back to Cardiff for a week again. But seeing that appetite was what kind of made me think, we can do this. Why not? So I did it myself.
You are an incredibly effective activist as well as being an accomplished actor. And you have turned that activism to a children's book.
Yes, little spark.
So you are involved in, you know, NHS, obviously, and politics and social activism. This is about homelessness.
Yeah.
So tell us about A House for Spark the Dragon, and is it something you read with your children?
It is. So I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, Lyra and Mabley. And so I've been back into reading bedtime stories, you know. And so the opportunity to create one of my own came up. And also to be able to tie it around an issue that I think is quite difficult for people to talk about with their children, you know, especially young children. So I thought, well, if we can create a context for conversations between young children and their parents, their families, around these sorts of issues about homelessness, then maybe we can take away the awkwardness of it. But, you know, first and foremost, it has to be an entertaining story, because I know if I'm reading a story to my kids and it's not entertaining them, that's it. It's done.
My favourite bit is the beaver. There was drilling and banging and gnawing and clanging. And I thought...
Dylan Thomas, isn't it?
Exactly. I thought you were challenging.
So this is the story of Spark, who loses his home in a storm and has to find a new home. And it's sort of trying to deal with all the issues that come up around homelessness.
Got to ask you, we're not expecting a speech, but the Welsh women's soccer team are in the Euros for the first time ever. Are they going to win it?
What an achievement. Well, of course, I think they're going to win it. But, I mean, the achievement is fantastic, and I wish them all the very best. Good luck, girls.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. It's great to see you. Thank you so much,
It's such a pleasure.
All the very best. Right, Lorraine is here at 9. Well, she's actually right there already.
I love Michael Sheen. Isn't he gorgeous? And doesn't he look beautiful? He looks all boyish and scrumptious. He's fantastic and does so many amazing things. We should all be more like Michael Sheen. That's what I think. Right, let me tell you what's coming up today as 80-year-old Rod Stewart proves age is naught but a number.